Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 306 of Super Switch Headz, the premier Nintendo podcast on all of the internet. My name is David Howe.
My name is Summer Rain.
Oh boy, ladies and gentlemen, we have a very special guest joining on today's episode. He's a gaming journalist. He is the owner of a board game company. Welcome to the show, the wonderful Ben Bertoli. How's it going, Ben?
Hi there. Thank you. So much applause. I appreciate that. It's great to be here.
Absolutely. It's great to have you. We have you on here today, Ben, because we are going to be talking all about the current state of games journalism. Listeners of the podcast will know we did an episode, I think about a year ago, about the state of games journalism, but it has been constantly in flux since then. A lot of companies have come back. A lot of companies have gone indie, and there have been many buyouts. We're going to be talking about kind of the state of it and kind of what we see as the way forward in the games journalism space. So I'm very excited to have that conversation with you, Ben. But before we get into that, we've got lots of news to cover ourselves. There was a Nintendo financial report and Q&A. We'll be talking a little bit about that. There's been a list of the free updates that Switch 1 games are going to be getting for Switch 2. Nintendo has announced they'll be at Gamescom and much, much more. But before we get into that, how's everybody doing? Do we have a good past week? How you doing, Summer?
Yeah, I'm doing okay. I just came back from Anime Central. It is the biggest anime con in kind of the Midwest, but specifically in Chicago. Had a great time. Just, if I sound kind of froggy, that's why. Definitely feeling a little rough today. That's just how it goes. I spend a lot of time, hooting and hollering, and yeah, had a great time. Yeah.
That's good. Yeah, it's always nice when there's a nerd convention like at your doorstep and it's actually cool.
Yeah. I realize that not everybody has that luxury. So
I've
been going to Anime Central for a really long time. I do recommend it.
Hell yeah. What about you, Ben? You have a good week?
Yeah, it's been pretty good. Outside of board games and video games, I'm a full-time teacher, and this is our last week of school. So my students are going insane, out of their minds. They're excited. We've got some fun stuff planned for the last few days.
Yeah.
Trying to get all these final tests and projects turned in. So it's a little bit of a madhouse. But I think everybody's ready for a big break.
Yeah,
So,
I feel you. What grade do you teach?
Sixth grade math and
Nice.
science.
Oh yeah. A lot of budding future Nintendo Switch 2 owners.
Oh yeah,
class, I would
big
imagine.
time.
Yeah.
No, when they premiered all the Switch 2 stuff, I took a few minutes out of class to show them the trailers and stuff, and they were all really hyped, until I told them how much it was going to cost.
Yeah. There's a lot of lawns, baby.
There's a lot of kids that are like, "You think I could just trade my Switch in for this?" Pure. I was like, "No, man, you're going to have to, trade in your Xbox too."
Maybe a couple of those. Yeah. I had a pretty good week. What did I do? I don't know. This weekend, I went swimming this weekend. So I actually went out and got a little bit of sun. It's been tremendously hot already in Austin. It got up to 102 degrees this past week. So,
ooh, no, that's not
May,
bad.
baby. Yeah. This is just the new normal. So I will be getting out of the city as quickly as I can. Hopefully this is the last of these summers I'll have to subject myself to. But other than that, I've been having a pretty good time. So glad to report that. Before we get into the news, I'd like to maybe do a little bit of shout outs. We've got some very special people to shout out. Last week, we actually had a special episode. We did a trivia episode between Summer and I. And I was the narrow victor. That was a nail biter. That was a real nail biter. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. We got some really fun comments on that. Hatstack Mike and Sewing Shade both chimed in on the YouTube with the points that they scored. There was actually a really great conversation in the Discord as well about just some of the questions that had potentially different sorts of answers. It was a really fun conversation following that episode. Also, I want to give a shout out to Derry King, who I think, as far as I can tell, this is the correct pronunciation of Ferrore. As the goddess from the Zelda series. I've never known exactly how to pronounce her name, but Ferrore. There you go. Now you know. And then Matthew also gave a really nice comment about some of the editing of the episode. There was lots of David from the future discussion in the Discord as well. So that was really nice to see. If you have anything to say about today's episode or anything at all, please leave us a comment on our YouTube or join us over there on our Discord. We'd love to hear from you. We could shout you out in a future episode. Also, if you could review this podcast on Apple or Spotify, leave a comment over there on Spotify too. You can do that now. And share the podcast with a friend. Word of mouth goes a really long way. We'd also really appreciate it if you were able to, post a link on Reddit or just talk about us somewhere online, social media. We'd really appreciate that. And with all that out of the way, let's get into the news, because there is a good bit of news. Since we took the last couple weeks off, some of this will be from around there, but starting with just some Nintendo Switch 2 news roundups here. The emails have started going out for the actual My Nintendo store pre-orders. I see you already, Ben, are pointing to yourself. Did you get one of those emails?
Yeah.
You went with the Nintendo pre-order as opposed to retailers then?
Yes. Well, not by choice. I woke up at midnight, much to the chagrin of my wife, to try and get, I had Best Buy set up, I had Target set up, I had Walmart set up, and just everything crashed. It was in the cart. It wasn't in the cart. It was, they wouldn't charge my card, whatever. There's an error, go back and try again. And so I was just like, whatever, I'll just keep looking and I'll hope that, because I signed up for that email, lottery so quickly. I saw it like Wario64 on Blue Sky or whatever posted it. And I was like, jumped right into it. I was like, man, I really hope I get it. So yeah, I saw they started going out and I was like, I really hope. And then it was, I think, like last Thursday, I think I got the actual email and I was like, yes. So I got that, got the system, the Mario Kart bundle and a Pro controller. And I think the little camera.
Nice. Yeah. I have not, I got the email as well, but I got a pre-order through GameStop. So I was asking any of my friends, I was like, anybody need one? Venmo me. I'll get you the thing. But I think everybody I think most of the people that want one, at least of the people I know right now, seem to be okay, which is good. Makes me wonder how many they're going to actually sell on the first week. Also, when these things are actually going to be shipping, because I don't know that there's any guarantee that they're coming out exactly on launch day, but hopefully they're at least right around there.
I hope so.
Yeah. People were also getting spammed, which was funny with other emails. I think we'll talk about it later in this episode, but Nintendo updated their end user license agreement. And people that were expecting pre-order emails were getting those instead and feeling a little burned by that. But we'll touch on that a little bit later. There was a free update for Switch 1 games list. Which is kind of interesting here. A lot of it is what you would expect. And a lot of these we had already heard about before. This is just basically explaining what those actual free updates will be. So if you're not familiar, these are games that are not getting Nintendo Switch 2 editions and are not getting full ports to Nintendo Switch 2. So these are just, if you own these games, you'll just get updates on the day if you're playing on the new system. And a lot of them are, frame rate improvements. I think for Pokemon Scarlet and Violet, they said those specifically got frame rate improvements. Almost all of them said visuals have been optimized for Nintendo Switch 2 display. So hopefully that means native 1080 when you're in handheld, 4K maybe even, or 1440p, I would think, when you're docked. Notably, the Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom and Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening games did not have frame rates listed. And I know that frame rates were kind of a big issue there. I'm giving Nintendo the benefit of the doubt now and thinking that hopefully that means that because those games have variable frame rates anyway, the parts where it would judder from 60 frames per second will just be smoothed out. And Pokemon, those were capped at 30. So that just means they're increasing it to 60. That's my hope anyway. But those are the two of the games that I'm most excited to play from my original catalog on the new system. So I'd be pretty disappointed in that. You guys have a chance to check this out. Are there any Switch 1 games that you're hoping get improvements on the new system?
I noticed that Pikmin 4 is not on that list. And I'm a huge Pikmin fan. So I'm like, can we get an enhanced version? They gotta, I swear at some point they said there was going to be some legit multiplayer on that game and not just, you're a person tossing rocks. So if they could, if they made an updated version that included a whole co-op mode, legit style. I mean, just Pikmin 3 had co-op that was great. That's what I really want from the updates.
Honestly, I think if they just added mouse mode into the Pikmin games, that would work really, really, really well. Just kind of like
play control. Yeah,
exactly.
Oh,
yeah,
man.
I think that'd be
the best way to play the original 2 in my mind.
Do we know that, or I guess, do we not know that there could be Switch 2 updates or like free updates for additional games? Like this isn't an exhaustive list, right?
I would imagine that this is not going to be it, but
we
again,
don't know either way.
We don't know. Yeah,
Right.
Nintendo has been super cagey. This whole rollout of information has been difficult to parse, right?
Sure.
So I think that they also have been very cagey about any games that are releasing outside of the ones that were all in the direct. They haven't really gone through and said anything new that's coming. So I would imagine after June 5, whenever this thing launches, there'll be some sort of summer direct, hopefully. And if not then around then to kind of talk about the roadmap for the rest of the year. Because this is all, I think, pretty close to launch window here.
Yeah. I'd personally like to see similar updates for Pokemon Sword and Shield and Legends Arceus. So, because those could obviously use the updates too. But when I see, just Scarlet and Violet, my first thought is, oh, so they've already moved on from Sword and Shield. But hard to say.
Yeah.
Either way, I mean, the Switch 2 is a lot more powerful, and they're, I think a Modern Vintage Gamer, friend of the show, has done a lot of videos on his channel, like overclocking the Switch with a modded system and getting better performance out of games without developers having to push any update out, just by having pure horsepower, seeing, dips happen less frequently, seeing a lot of times when the resolution would scale, it staying at those higher resolutions, so hopefully that kind of stuff just happens naturally as you're playing a lot of games, especially if they're made with uncapped frame rates. But speaking of Switch 2 specs, the specs have been revealed for the system. I'm not going to go over all of these in great detail, but just know that they're out there. I think somebody like Digital Foundry, if you're interested in looking up kind of the exact ways that the Switch 2 is more powerful than the Switch 1, I would recommend checking out Digital Foundry. I'm sure they've got videos on this at this point. But anybody who's interested in that can pore over some of those technical details. So wanted to give that a shout out at least. Moving on, Nintendo did have their quarterly financial report this most recent quarter. I guess this is kind of the turnover of the fiscal year. So we are now entering quarter one of Nintendo's new financial quarter for 2025. And they also had a Q&A that they were able to put out as well, which has been translated at this point. I haven't been able to actually read the Q&A. I wanted to before we recorded this episode. I didn't have a chance to, but I did look over at least some of the financial report. And it definitely seems like we are in the point right now where I think we're just now seeing sales for the Switch dip. Like if you look at the graph, it's like this is the first time that this is the first time that Nintendo has sold less units year on year, or at least I think it was like 1 million user base down, something like that. So we're definitely at the point now that I think Nintendo was trying to avoid with not announcing the Switch 2 for a really long time, because now everybody knows it's coming. So people are playing less on their current console and definitely prepping for the new system. I think there's also a little bit of stuff from the Q&A that I saw about, I think it was Furukawa said that some of their predictions are a little conservative for first year sales for the Switch 2. He basically cited price as a reason for that. But I still think this is likely to be one of the biggest console launches of all time. Anybody have a chance to look at these financials or have any thoughts on the current state of the Switch?
I have not had a chance to look over them. Unfortunately, I've just been so slammed with other things. But I mean, it kind of makes sense. And the funny thing is that they've been predicting the successor to the Switch like every year. Switch Pro is coming, that kind of thing. Right. And so you would think that it would have dipped. I mean, these reports go until when? Like, when do they cut off? Is it like up into to that date or?
This one was, I think, sometime in March, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I feel like it's time that the Switch kind of started petering out. It makes sense, from a buying standpoint and knowing that the next thing is on the horizon. So it'll be really interesting to see how many people do adopt a Switch 2 on day one.
Yeah, I agree. And I do think that the Nintendo will continue to see Switch 1 sales even throughout the course of the Switch 2's life. I can very much see the Switch 1 actually reaching those PS2 numbers. So. There was a report that just came out today that Nintendo will be attending Gamescom 2025. You might have remembered that last year Nintendo decided to sit out Gamescom. That is obviously in Cologne, Germany. And the reason was never really given, but I think a lot of people thought that either A, they were too busy prepping for Switch 2 and needed kind of all hands on deck, or they were kind of burned because the previous year it was, at least speculated that they had these kind of closed door meetings showing off Breath of the Wild running in 4K, 60 frames per second. And here we go. That's one of the launch games for the system here, right? Is the Nintendo Switch 2 version of Breath of the Wild. So it seems like all the secrets are out and they're more comfortable going. Ben, have you ever had a chance to go to Gamescom, or have you ever been interested in attending?
No, I mean, yeah, I would love to attend, but no, I've never done any international conventions, really. I've been on vacation to Europe and Asia and things like that, but it was never for like a specific event or anything like that.
Yeah.
Even in America, like I have not been to that many gaming conventions. I've been to E3, well, when E3 existed, twice. Sure. And then PAX I've been to once. So yeah, it's definitely something I'd love to do, but I don't know. Yeah. It usually doesn't work out super well with everything I have going on. Have you ever been?
Yeah. No, I've never been. I would also love to go. And it's easy to forget sometimes just how huge Gamescom is. I think it's like much bigger than E3 ever was. And it's just got this massive space with tons of people. And so I would definitely love to attend at some point. I've actually just never been to Germany in general. I think it'd be fun to go. But we'll see. Next year, we'll get the press pass for Gamescom. And we'll be sure to report in everything. But I don't know. We'll see. Moving on, the sequel to the Super Mario Brothers movie made by Illumination Entertainment has a title. It was leaked in I don't know if leaked is the right word, but basically there was a press kind of release for, I think it was Peacock, which is owned by NBC Universal. They also own Illumination, and Universal releases the films that had just kind of a spat of different films that will eventually be going to the streaming platform. And among them was one just called Super Mario World. So that's pretty exciting, I guess. Well, this begs the question on if we think that this next movie, which they obviously teased at the end of the first movie with like a Yoshi egg, do you guys think that this is going to be more of like an actual like straight adaptation? The first movie was kind of its own thing. Do you see them going with that? Maybe, because I think bringing in the Koopalings as, like characters would be fun, although there's so many of them. Get every like weird famous comedian in there to voice Koopaling. I mean, they could do it and go to like Dinosaur Island, I think, wherever Yoshi lives. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. I'm into it. What do you think, Summer? Are you excited for this? Did you like the first Mario movie? I forget if you even saw it.
I saw it in theaters twice. I thought it was enjoyable for sure. Yeah, I enjoyed it, like, because it is what it is, like I thought it definitely was good for what it was meant to be. So it's no Minecraft movie, though, is what you're saying. No, it certainly isn't. Mario doesn't have the same social value, I guess, as Minecraft, which is really
jockey.
Yeah, exactly.
So I mean, like, okay, of course I want to see Yoshi. Of course I want to see anything else. Yeah.
I wonder if they'll try to capitalize on the kind of memeability of the Minecraft movie with this new one. I don't know. Maybe. Yeah. I mean, is Yoshi going to talk? That's what I'm worried about. I didn't even think about that, and now I'm going to think about that for a while. I just see Jack Black coming out and being like, "Charge it, Chuck!" and people throwing their popcorn at the screen. And I don't know. I think it's something to think about. I'm excited for this. I actually think it would be pretty cool if they did kind of more, because there's a lot of games that they could make stories out of, like you could make a narrative out of the Super Mario World. There kind of was a manga for it that was released in Nintendo Power back in the day. They could kind of sort of adapt that. I think, in a way that would actually work pretty well. But I think it's a good idea to start actually mining games specifically for their stories. I think the comics movies have been doing that for a while in Hollywood and just kind of being like, we're going to base off of this storyline and this storyline. And I think it's just kind of a good way to do it. But we'll have to see how that turns out. Nintendo Switch Online, which I believe is still called Nintendo Switch Online on the Switch 1 right now, but it will be at least renamed to Nintendo Classics on the Switch 2. Got a new game for the expansion pack for the N64 console, that being Killer Instinct Gold.
Nice.
We had some discussion about this game in the Discord, actually. This was one of the games that was on the box for the N64 whenever it first came out. Big advertiser for the system, kind of as an arcade game you can play at home. Did you play this game, Ben? Are you a Killer Instinct fan?
I'm not like a huge Killer Instinct. I'm just a huge Nintendo 64 fan.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it was one of those launch window games that as a kid, I didn't get an N64 right away, but my friend down the road had one. And this was one of the games I remember us renting and just like, mashing buttons against each other.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge fan of Rare. So it kind of, falls, it definitely falls under that umbrella.
Yeah.
So I have good memories of it. I'm sure if I picked it up, I would be just as terrible as I was back then,
Yeah.
But
it definitely seems like it's one that you can mash buttons on. It's like not as combo focused as the Street Fighters and everything like that. But I don't know. I never had a chance to play this when I was younger. I was too busy playing Cruising USA over and over again. So that was my launch game. I didn't even get Mario 64 for.
Oh man.
It was like a good solid couple months before I got to play that game. But yeah, I'll be picking this one up and playing it sometime soon because I think it is now on everyone's console if you have the expansion pack. Moving on, there are a couple Nintendo Live experiences that are going to be coming around, or at least Nintendo adjacent. The first one is the San Francisco store has opened. That opened on May 19th. Which is today, the day we're recording. So I guess there were a couple days where they had early access, but that store is now open to the public. I think that's in Union Square, if I'm not mistaken. I don't really know my San Fran geography super well, but it's got a lot of interesting, unique stuff in it that you can't find at the Nintendo store. I think one of the things that really stood out to me was like miniature. And when I say miniature, they're actually pretty big. They're a lot bigger than Amiibo, but they're like figures of the big statues that they have in the stores. So like the Splatoon Inkling and was one that really looked cool to me. Like a big bust of the Splatoon Inkling, I think would be a pretty cool statue to own. And there's a bunch of merch and unique stuff there. So I'd love to have an excuse to go out to the Bay Area again. It's been a while. Got some friends out there, so definitely would be nice to go visit there. But every time I go to one of these stores, I always just want to buy everything and then have that I get like I freeze up and I just don't end up getting anything, or I get like one or two items that sit on my shelf for forever. But you got any interest in this summer?
I mean, okay. So like I obviously have interest, but I'm not making it out just to get to the store. I know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I sadly actually, I know I did go to San Francisco last summer. I don't know that trip's going to happen this year. So like maybe next year.
Yeah, maybe next year. That'd be nice. Yeah, there's also a new store opening in Fukuoka, Japan. I believe is how you pronounce that. I've actually never known exactly how to pronounce that city's name, but that'll be opening later this year. That'll be the 4th Nintendo store in Japan. I hope that we see more of these outside of just the two coasts.
They're really
the
cool.
Yeah. I always figured that there would be stores in malls just everywhere, like the Disney store, but that never really ended up happening. They kind of are a bit more conservative, but who knows? I think that the new kind of Furukawa-led Nintendo opening up parks and stuff around the world, I can see them getting more into retail space as well. But we'll see. I don't know. Retail is very different in the US than it is in Japan. It just doesn't make as much sense to have brick and mortar spots. But next year, also, there will be the opening of the Pokemon Fossil Museum at the Field Museum in Chicago. I'm not super familiar with this. Do you have any? Could you expand on this a little bit,
yes,
Summer?
I would love to. The Pokemon Fossil Museum is basically this hybrid, like replicas of what is the museums in the Pokemon games in real life based on like our actual museums, with fossils.
So they have like Aerodactyls and stuff like that?
Yeah, exactly.
Omnite.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha.
Tops.
And right, and there's a couple of Pokemon like that for every single generation, and they've also included some, I think, topics of evolution generally in the Pokemon universe as well. When this first popped up in Japan, I was so enthralled, and like was watching all of the footage that I could of it because I am obsessed with things like this. The museums in the Pokemon games are like kind of like one of my favorite things. Like as a kid, I would literally get a notebook and I would like take notes like in the museums. And this now the fact that it's coming to my city.
That's great. That's very exciting.
I'm so excited for this. So yeah.
Yeah, I saw some pictures of it. It definitely seemed really cool. I'd like to go as well. Maybe we'll have a little Switch Headz.
Absolutely, for sure.
It's not far from where I live. So I mean,
oh yeah, that's right.
I'm in Indianapolis, so 3 hours. I can get there.
All right.
But,
all right. Midwest heads all going to meet up at the Field Museum in Chicago. That's exciting.
Yeah.
All right, moving on to some of our last news topics here, and this is sadly in the fuck Nintendo section here, the Nintendo bad section of the podcast. As we talked about earlier, Nintendo kind of, well, I was going to say quietly rolled out an end user license agreement, but they were pretty public about this, kind of sent out an email to everybody who has a Nintendo Switch Online account and is, I suppose, has a system, updating their end user license agreement. There's a lot in here. Obviously, I'm sadly not the nerd that pores over every EULA in terms of service. When I get a new thing, I sort of am going to be like, well, I'm going to be using this thing regardless. I'm just going to click accept. But there are a couple of things in there that are not great. Some of these you find in other end user license agreements quite a bit, specifically asking users to give up their rights to a class action lawsuit. That's something that I think got in kind of hot water recently with maybe Disney Plus. I forget exactly what it was, but there was like a lot of time these terms of service and end user license agreements are not legal documents. These are just things that they have as their specific rules, right? So it's going to be hard to see how much of this actually holds up in court. But I mean, obviously Nintendo was rattled by the, Joy-Con drift, class action lawsuit that happened and caused them to basically give out free repairs ad infinitum to at least users in the West. So that's a shame to see, but not completely unexpected. Also, the one that really scares me and the one that really kind of doesn't make me feel very good, and I would also like to see if it holds up in court, is they said that they can remotely brick your Switch if they catch you playing pirated games or modified software. That's not great. And I really can't see that actually happening, to be honest. That I don't know if anyone's ever done that before in tech. If so, please let me know in the comments. But what do you guys think about some of these? Do these seem fair? Does it seem like an overreach? What do you think about this?
Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of a touchy subject for a lot of people. I feel like, I don't know. I mean, if you're using it to, emulate something that is impossible to find or, like a fun, like fan made service type thing, it's probably fine. I don't know if Nintendo's going to be monitoring that closely to see like if you deserve to have your Switch bricked or not. Probably not. Right. But if people are, modifying their system to outright steal full games and take away money that could have gone to developers, both Nintendo and smaller, I don't know, part of me feels like they deserve it, but yeah, like I said, it's a tricky line to walk.
Yeah, I mean, I agree that it's complicated, but I've been pretty outspoken on the belief that I think that this kind of thing is not worth it. And that I think going after people like this causes a lot more bad will and potentially hurts like legal, real customers than it does stop piracy from happening. I think that piracy and especially modding your system or whatever, like that is going to happen. Like it happened pretty quickly with the Switch One, and then it got really good eventually with the Switch One. but it never really got to the point that it did with like R4 cards and, you know, DS mods and stuff like that. I feel like most of that was just because of Nintendo putting out good old fashioned system updates and largely ignoring it and just focusing on the hardware but through updates. Like, you know, like when the OLED came out, they, you know, patched a huge exploit that people were able to use in modifying their original Switches, right? And I think you can modify the OLED Switch, but by that point, everybody was, you know, just, they're like, all right, well, if we're going to play games, we'll just play them on a Switch 1, right? And just didn't even really, you know, care to modify OLED Switches. And it's not like they sold any less of those systems going forward, right? The OLED continues to be the number one seller for the original Switch model. So this to me seems like they're just kind of like trying to strike the fear of God into people. But again, I would be very surprised if anybody actually loses control of their system. And if they did, I mean, I would hope that they would lawyer up, because I don't know that that has precedent in the past. So that's just kind of my 2 cents on that. We'll have to see how that shakes out. But lastly, on our news here, and this one's, I don't really know exactly what category this one will go into, but there was a dating app for Super Smash Brothers players called Smash Together, which has received a cease and desist from Nintendo. And I got to say, I'm kind of on the side of Nintendo on this one. I think that we should shame Super Smash Brothers players, keep them single. No, I'm joking, obviously. But at least the like competitive Smash scene has kind of been known to have sort of a bad rap. And there's also been a lot of history of unfortunate
you're talking
relations.
to the guy who ran competitive Smash tournaments.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, hopefully there was no untoward hookups happening at those tournaments, but they have been known to happen.
Not that I'm aware of.
Well, yeah. What do you think about this, Ben?
I mean, I don't know. This one seems like Nintendo could have probably left it alone. I mean, unless they were using. I mean, the imagery, it was like a heart with the Smash Brothers, you know, like little window symbol in it. I don't know if it went beyond that, you know.
Right.
I'm happily married. I wasn't on any dating apps. But I do feel like Smash Brothers players, you know, they need love too.
Well, of course.
But,
yeah. I'm praying for them every day. But yeah, no, I don't know. Nintendo is going to Nintendo. It seems like in this new kind of era of Nintendo, they have not become any less litigious than they have been historically, or sending out cease and desists. I can see fan games suffering the same fate going forward. So anybody kind of hoping for a new ray of light with Nintendo going forward into this new console cycle, I think should adjust their expectations.
Just waiting for the PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale dating app. Wait, years and years.
Yeah, there will be 2 people on that app, and hopefully they find each other, because they're clearly made for each other there. All right, well, that is going to do it for our news. We're going to move on in just a moment here to the main topic, which is the current state of games journalism with our guest Ben Bertoli, right after this break. And we're back from the break. And we will be talking today all about games journalism, the current state of gaming journalism with our guest here, Ben Bertoli. Very glad to have you, Ben. Maybe before we get into some of the recent things that have been happening in the gaming journalism world, you can give us a little bit of background about yourself, maybe some of the different places you've written for and how you got into games journalism in the first place.
Yeah, sure. So growing up, it was kind of my ultimate life goal to write for Nintendo Power. That was my big, like, I still have all my issues over here, you know, on the shelf. The Metroid Prime issue, there's a piece of art that I drew of Mario skateboarding. It's not the best thing I've ever done, but I got my name in Nintendo Power, and that was a big deal. I was reading that issue. We were driving somewhere, and I literally screamed, and my mom almost wrecked the van. So good memory there.
Nice.
But yeah, and so just, I mean, you know, in college I was an elementary ed major because I just didn't think that I would actually, be able to hack it in journalism. And I started writing for some very small sites, just for like a few bucks here and there. Kind of snuck my way into E3 2012 as a journalist, in quotes. And really what happened after that was Kotaku had this reader run site, and I used to be all over the articles and commenting and stuff, and writing little blurbs and stuff. And they were like, "Hey, do you want to run the reader run site?" Yeah, sure. I can do that. And it was just kind of like a blog, but you had to have an account at Kotaku, and I had to approve people and edit things, and it was completely free. They could pull things to the main Kotaku site if they wanted to, like, hey, one of our readers wrote this, and my stuff just kept getting pulled over to reviews and, history things. And I had a whole series, Smash Brothers, like who should be added to Smash Brothers. It was called Challenger Approaching. And
Okay, nice.
Got to the point where the editor-in-chief or the deputy editor, Tina Amini, who now works for Xbox, she was just like, do you want to run, like, we're going to be gone for like a Memorial Day weekend or something. Do you just want to run the website while we're gone? You can put up whatever articles you want, and we're going to pay you for it. And I was like, no way. Amazing. So that was kind of my in there at Kotaku. And then I just started pitching everywhere and just getting rejected left and right. A lot of people just think that I'm super lucky because I've written for a lot of big sites and magazines and things. But I mean, it's just like 90% rejection. It's just me reaching out to Polygon, every month for years and years saying, wait, what about this? What about this idea? I could review this game. I could, write this feature. And at some point they, had an idea, or they liked my pitch well enough that they let me in. And even for some sites, it didn't happen again for years and years. Some sites I've only written for, once because I got that opportunity. So it's just been a lot of that, a lot of rejection, and a lot of almost like getting lucky and, making connections, trying to be like as professional and thorough in my writing as possible. So people are like, wow, we like this guy. We want to invite him back. Or, so other people see Polygon before they before they cleaned house over there, reached out to me in December while I was on Christmas break and said like, hey, you're the Donkey Kong guy. Do you want to review the new Donkey Kong game for the, like HD for the Switch that's coming out? And I was like, yeah, sure. I had not written a professional review since Nintendo Labo for IGN, like 7 years prior. It'd been a long time since I'd done an actual official review. Yeah. But like, I guess that's just my reputation, that I'm a decent writer and I really like Donkey Kong. So
that's it. There are worse reputations to have in the industry. I guarantee you.
I love it. Yeah. And so, people just, they kind of know that I like to write about Nintendo history, and I've got my foot in the door in a lot of cool places. Game Informer, A Profound Waste of Time. If you guys know that magazine, it's like,
that's like a crowdfunded magazine, right? Yeah, it looks cool.
It's it's so nice. Like it's all this like custom art. There's no screenshots or anything. All these I got to interview Tim Schafer of Double Fine. I got to do a whole history of HAL. And then in the upcoming issue, this last summer, I got to interview the whole Donkey Kong 64 team from Rare.
Oh, great.
The director and Grant Kirkhope, who I've interviewed like 3 or 4 times at this point, who's always a hoot. And so, it's just like you get these big sites behind you, and then they reach out to people and say, hey, we have this guy that wants to do this. And they're like, oh, yeah. For IGN, sure. For Polygon, sure. And then I'm like, oh my God, I'm talking to my, my hero who designed some of my favorite games. And it's mind blowing. The imposter syndrome is just like off the charts. Like, I don't deserve this. I don't know how I got here, but I'm gonna, fake it till I make it. So I guess that's
totally. I feel like that's got to be like so much of what just the games journalism industry is people all in similar boats, just kind of like. And it sounds like it's 99% hustle and badgering, if I'm reading what you're saying.
Yeah,
right?
It can be. Yeah. And it's a lot of like, like I always say, I'm fine with like silence. Like if I pitch something and I hear nothing back, that's okay. That, like,
Right.
okay,
Oh.
you didn't read it or you didn't like it enough to respond. That's okay. My biggest issue, and this happens all the time, is I pitch something and they say, "Oh yeah, that sounds great." Oh, like we'll get in contact with you later, or like
And then they
tell
never
us.
do.
Yeah, they never do. They just fall off the face of the face of the earth. It's really frustrating. Really frustrating.
They need to invent just a thumbs up emoji for emails.
Yeah. They should.
Just send that
would be
back.
amazing.
Outlook does.
Really?
Yeah, because sometimes my boss will just like thumbs up or heart emoji my emails, and I'm like, all right.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
you're right. I mean, it's nice to just see. It is. I understand what you're saying. Like about the. You expect that people just get a shit ton of emails and can't respond to everything, but yeah, being like strung along is so much worse. Than
Like I
just being
love
outright.
rejection. If I send you a pitch and like within by the next morning you're like no, I'm like cool, fine. I'm gonna try it somewhere else, or like what if
I'll move on
put
with my
this
life.
Twist on it? Yeah. I love rejection if it happens quickly. Really, really frustrating. Especially if I have a great idea that's kind of timely, about a game coming out, and I want to interview a developer, and I pitch it to a site that I think it would work best on, and then I hear nothing, and then that window kind of closes, and then I can't pitch it to anybody else.
Right.
And I was really going hard there for a while, covering weekends for Kotaku randomly and trying to get, my name out there on different sites, and getting paid, but not getting paid super well. And now I just kind of do like 2 to 3 big articles a year where I really have time to sit down with like a developer or, really dig into, my research, or review Donkey Kong if that happens. So
yeah, the profound waste of time, which kind of almost seems more like a big fancy zine than like a classic magazine, just in the way that it's like set up. I think that seems like there we go. See, yeah, that's beautiful. I love that. I think that you've got a really cool opportunity there to write and work with like a smaller team and do these like bigger, longer things. But when it comes to like the kind of the big publications, like say your Kotakus, your Polygons, and a lot of this is kind of in the past tense now, sadly, but IGN or whatever. It seems, are you mostly cold calling there? Like, were you ever full time at Kotaku, or have you always been contractor?
No, always freelance. Yeah,
right.
Freelance always. I think I interviewed for a position at Polygon at one point, and they were just like, "You don't really seem to have enough experience for this." And I was like, "Fair enough." So yeah, no, I've never held a full-time position as a games journalist. I've considered it. I've considered quitting teaching, but it's extremely volatile industry to be in. Like every time they're like, beloved website gets shut down and all the people are laid off, and I'm like, I know a lot of those people and they're fantastic writers, and like I would be in that same boat if I had worked at Polygon or
well, it certainly seems like the way that the industry is trending is very much towards that. Like I feel like there's less and less like full-time writers at like even the big dogs like IGN, and so many of the people that they bring on like are freelancers. We had Isaiah Colbert on recently. I don't know if you guys know each other, but he was saying very similar stuff about how so much of it is it's like gig work now almost than it ever has been in the past.
Yeah, I think I'm lucky enough to be in that position where I like have a reputation in the industry to the point where like people know me and trust me to get things done. But like I could just completely stop writing and I would, be fine because of my teaching job, because of the, my other side hustles. So I'm in a good position. But then again, like I almost feel bad, I don't, there's all these people that are out of work that are, in my opinion, much better writers than me and much more deserving because they've put much more time and effort into games journalism.
And they're the ones that had the full-time gigs because of their experience and their output and all that kind of stuff.
And I try to push those people into spots. You mentioned the small team at a profound waste of time. It is one guy. It is just Caspian Whistler, who's lives in London. Fantastic guy. We've become friends over the years working together. But every time someone loses a job, I'm always like, hey, what if you wrote an article for a profound waste of time? Just to him saying this person's out of a job. They're really good. Like, I bet you could get them to, go interview Kojima or something. Like, they have contacts, they have like the know-how. And so I'm always trying to like push other people into those opportunities, even if it might be something that maybe I would have done.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I there's more I want to get into, and I certainly want to talk about, the recent, it's not really a closure of Polygon, but, Polygon was sold to Valnet. The majority of the staff was laid off for freelancers. Obviously, it seems like Valnet is going to be chasing a lot of this SEO clickbait sort of stuff that you see in your phone when you scroll all the way to the left, at least for Android users, right? Like, it's just kind of, hey, this is what you want to see, right? And we should talk about that along with Giant Bomb going independent. That's something that happened since we recorded our last full news episode. But I'm kind of curious in what you were just talking about with the like kind of single man operation, right? And there was a article that has been making the rounds recently from GameDeveloper.com. And I don't know if you've read this article, but it was about how PAX really showed the deprofessionalization of the games industry. Did you have a chance to look at that article? Did you see that going around? Yeah, it was. I can surmise it basically, but it's been something I've been curious about in the film and production industry. I work in animation, and I think recently, especially at this Oscars, I think the big movies that really won large were these tiny little teams, Anora won a big, and that was a tiny crew independent film. And then in the animation Oscar, Flow. Yeah. And that was, I
love Flow. Yeah.
Oh, I love that movie too. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to knock any of these things with what I'm about to say, but it's like, it seems like in the games industry, you're seeing that too, where it's like a lot of new games that come out and really make it big. Your Balatros, your, any number of these games that are made by solo game devs and hit it off really big. The ceiling for, what you're able to hit because of the kind of democratization of independent games online, when you're a single developer that knows how to code and write music and do all the art and everything, like, it just seems like that is what is gaining a lot of traction in a lot of these creative fields. And it kind of feels to me like I'm seeing the same thing happening in journalism as well. Right. And I think that this is a good thing in a lot of ways. I think it's a success story, right? When people are able to, kind of do a one-man operation like this profound waste of time, like that's incredible. But it kind of comes at the cost of like labor, you know what I mean? And I think that's something that I've been noticing is like, I worry that Hollywood is going to get the wrong idea by movies like Flow and Anora doing extremely well. And that just means that there are less people employed, in these like, bigger teams and studios. And I kind of worry about that too in journalism. And I just wondered if you had any insight on that. And if you think that's like, because like you said, it's like we're seeing lots of smaller independent sites come up now. We've got Aftermath and Giant Bomb are independent now, but those are small operations and there's a lot of people out of work. Like, how do you kind of come to terms with that?
Yeah. Well, and I'd like to clarify that when I said that A Profound Waste of Time was one guy, Caspian is the one who created the magazine.
Sure.
And he's the one that like everything goes through him. But now that he's, putting out more issues, I think he has like hired a part-time editor who comes in and looks over things. He obviously like freelance illustrators and, he's paying all these freelance writers because he doesn't write much. So while it is technically one person who's in charge of everything, there's just no full-time staff outside of him. So I think you're right that some of these smaller, sites and publications, it's great that they have that total control, but depending on how much money they have coming in, they might be scraping by and they don't have the money to pay freelance, anybody to do anything, whether that's design or, write articles or anything. So yeah, it kind of, it's nice to take back control, but it doesn't leave a lot of wiggle room for the other people. And it might lead to this, wave of other sites that are saying, we're going solo. We're going to try this on our own. Give us $7 a month. And then, it's like the streaming wars. Do I give the money to Netflix? Do I give the money to Hulu? Who do I think deserves it? Who do I know? And, there's writers out there that have started solo things. And I've just been like, I don't think, I can't afford to support this site and that site and that site and that site.
Right.
Just depending on, what their output is and how interested I am in the information, no matter how great the people are that are doing it. So, yeah, I think we're in a nice spot right now where there's just a few really big sites. And then, tons of people have Patreons. I used to have a Patreon for a podcast that I ran. So, maybe I think you need to seek out the people that you really care about the most in the industry, and try to support them the best you can. And then if there are full teams of people that you also enjoy, then maybe you can put, some of your hard-earned cash towards them. But it does become, there's a point where you're going to have to pick and choose. It's going to get a lot harder.
Yeah. And certainly, it's not like we're going to solve the labor problem like here, like on on Switch Headz necessarily, but
it's
just but it's just something to think about. I just feel like and we, in my job, it's like we recently formed a union, and I know that IGN writers also formed a union as well, and I know that that's an ongoing struggle for them. But I know that it also means a lot of times that's happening in the face of this like changing market, right? And it's like, and we've got a lot changing in games journalism at the moment, and it feels like a lot of it, it obviously is like the gigification that we've been talking about of like, majority freelancers and stuff like that, but also, like AI is kind of like a pretty fundamental threat for like not just games journalism, but everything.
Yeah.
It's
a fundamental threat for my 6th grade math and science classes.
Is that true? Are you having to? Yeah. How do you even suss that out? Like what do you do in that situation?
I mean, I've told the kids so many times, my students, that if I catch you using AI to solve your math problems or write your science essays or whatever, like it's just a 0. Like it's not you. It's not your brain coming up with the answer. I would rather you gave me a poorly worded, but technically accurate response than just plugging it into ChatGPT and it giving me some babbling explanation of something that you don't really understand. And it's amazing the number of kids that will argue with me. Oh, I wrote that. And I'm like, can you tell me what half these words mean? Can you pronounce any of these things? Oh, no, So I just worry. AI is like the number one thing that I am just so afraid of for the future in everything that I do, in games journalism, in teaching, in board game design. Honestly, like the amount of crappy AI art that keeps popping up, and I'm just like, just please stop, guys. You're not making this better. You're making everything worse.
Yeah, exactly. Do you have any thoughts on any of this summer as far as like the way, I don't know, it's just kind of this idea of like deprofessionalization, like I don't love that as a term. That's kind of a mouthful, to be honest, but it's like it's just an interesting thing to wrap your head around.
Because like at first, without like reading the article and having the additional context and conversation of it, I'm like, well, professionalism is a construct, and what does that mean? And culturally, it means a lot of different things, and usually it's centered around whiteness, blah 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 blah.
Sure.
But what this article is actually getting at is like the protections that are available to you en masse as workers, and when you are like decentralizing is maybe like the better, at least that's kind of what I'm getting from this, is that you have so many, when you have more and more folks, and I don't know that decentralization is necessarily a bad thing either, but I think what this article is trying to say is that that they feel like it is the wrong message of, well, if we're all so decentralized, or as they are saying, deprofessionalized, we are removing perceived protections of, and not just protections, but like all of the other things that go into being a larger business and the areas that, do tend to get cut even by those big businesses first. So
or just like job security,
Yeah.
it's like people who want to do, like you said, Ben, like you are like in a position where I feel like a lot of what you're doing is like quite literally for the love of the game, like it's in as far as like games journalism is concerned. But I think that there's a lot of people that like this is or was their livelihoods, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, I don't know. My parents, have been doing the small business gig. It's most of my life. My dad quit his 6-figure job to become, a farmer. So like, I've seen both sides of the coin in that space. Like that, we're just talking about that, but like with gaming and with journalism, of like, there's pros and cons to all of it. Absolutely. What's the better side? I don't know. I
mean, it's a hard time to be a writer for sure. Like I think
yeah.
this article also said that it was like the largest amount of developers that were laid off in the last year, as far as like game developers are concerned, were in narrative, which makes a lot of sense, to a degree, obviously, but it's not what you want to see. Right. And so I think that's just like kind of difficult right now. And it's also, you just are in a situation too, where I think with a lot of, with many more smaller publications, you just have the visibility problem then at that point, right?
Sure.
Like, and then it's also, if you want to be seen, then you got to write like more bigger bombastic articles that are like, maybe, not super ethically what you should be posting if you're trying to get seen by the most amount of people, right? But anyway, we could put a pin in that conversation right now. I probably should have saved that until the end. I do want to talk a little bit about more of these independent spots that are coming up. Like, obviously Polygon, I think the loss of Polygon, maybe let's start there. I think the loss of Polygon is actually, that was pretty shocking for me when that happened. And again, it's like, I keep talking like it's dead. Like Polygon's still around, but it's certainly lost its mortal coil. At least the lifeblood of the company seems to be gone. And Polygon, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, especially as someone who's written for Polygon multiple times, but they seemed like kind of like one of the most legitimate kind of rags out there as far as the gaming space is concerned. Like I love IGN and they're like certainly the biggest, but Polygon always had really in-depth articles. Can you give us any of your experience with the company and kind of what the shakeup here with their sale to Valnet kind of means to you?
I mean, it kills me. It hurts my heart. I had a article that I was working on all last summer for Game Informer, and I was at Gen Con, which is a board game convention in Indianapolis, walking around the show floor when that news came down that Game Informer was going away. This article that was supposed to be in a physical magazine the next month, just dead, gone. All the people I'd worked with, every editor, every person who had helped me, just laid off. And that article is technically never going to see the light of day because I signed a contract that says that the GameStop or whoever owns it, and
it's like a non-compete, I guess.
Kind of just like this is ours, you're writing it for us, like okay. And so Polygon was like even more of like a weird like blindside thing, just because I don't know. Like, I guess I just never saw it coming. Game Informer was always kind of struggling, I think, because of like subscription, as like the physical media. And I had already known that, some great writers there that have been laid off in the past. But yeah, Polygon, I mean, not to put down any other website that I ever went to that was video game related, was kind of like my go-to. They had those deep reports. And they had some really good, like in-depth, like things that were like on silly aspects. Like they hired me to write an article that was just about the crank on the side of the Playdate, that weird little handheld. Like they paid me a lot of money to do that, and I got to interview a lot of really cool people. Right. And I just feel like no other site would have ever gone for that. And yeah, I don't know. That's one of the websites that I could always I knew that when I reached out to their editors that they were going to get back to me, good or bad.
Right.
They were going to get back to me and let me know. And they were always reaching out to me and saying, hey, we're about to do this themed week about, whatever, anime. We're about to do this themed week about, retro games. Like, do you have a pitch for us that you think we might like? And even if I didn't, it just felt good because it felt like I was, in their good graces, and it was a site that I really respected. And yeah, like everyone but Maddie Myers, who I really had contact with, is gone. And she came over from Kotaku, so I kind of knew her.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. It felt like a punch in the gut. And I know that they've reached out to some people, some freelance people, to say, hey, how would you like to come, write for, pennies? And I don't think I could do it. I don't think I could, because it's just kind of like, it's still Polygon, but it feels like it's like a shambling corpse of what it was. It just doesn't have the people behind it that I love working with. And so, like, I don't know. It kills me once again. It's like when, Game Informer's back, and I love that. And I'm already talking to them about potentially pitching things this summer.
That's great.
With, like, I love working with Polygon in the past, but I don't think I would now. And it's just a big name that's off the table for me.
Totally. Yeah. It's hard when everybody's kind of cleaned house and you can't vouch for whoever it is that's currently running the show. I think that is a lot of trust is broken there. I think it also kind of sullies, at least from me, and I'm not a journalist, but it's like, as someone who consumes a lot of journalism in all forms, just other companies that are owned by Vox Media. It makes me distrust Vox quite a bit. You know what I mean? And it's like, if this is going to happen to what ostensibly was one of the most respected games journalism platforms like out there, like how long until the same thing happens to The Verge or any of these like other platforms that Vox owns, of which obviously there are a myriad that Vox owns at the moment. So I'm not trying to obviously throw any stones or put anybody down, but it makes a lot of your trust gets broken both on the consumer level and from the actual like production and journalism side, like the people that are actually making the articles. So
yeah,
that's a real shame to hear.
I worry that the things that I've written in the past are going to be, like killed off, or that's what happened with Game Informer. Is those articles? They're back now, thank God. But like, they were just gone, and I was like, man, I better like do some screenshots or something of my Polygon articles. Because
that is a good tip just for everything. Make backups of any place you ever work. No, it never has to see the light of day, but keep it in a closet somewhere. That's just a good thing, especially in the world of streaming when things get like taken off of streaming services and stuff like that. It's kind of a responsibility of people to archive their own stuff, which, you wish it didn't have to be like that. But yeah, speaking of Game Informer, it does seem, like you said, they were brought back. I didn't realize they were actually bought by a games publisher, Gunzilla Games. Yeah. I don't know if that's happened before. Have we seen that happen before in games media?
Not that I'm aware of.
Yeah.
I'm optimistic, trying to be cautiously optimistic that's going to go well and they're going to be able to, they're all working to get like the physical magazine back in people's hands. And, they have such good connections, and I don't think they've ever really lost that. Like, I don't think anyone's going to be like, "Oh, you're the new Game Informer. Like, why would we let you interview our, developers?"
Right.
So
yeah.
I think, they'll just be right back where they were.
Unlike Polygon, it's at least the whole team is seemingly back together, which you love to see.
Right.
I really hope the magazine can come back. That's obviously really hard, I think, in today's age, but I think there's been a lot of really good successes with like Patreon run magazines, like Nintendo Force. I'm a big fan of. I don't know if you've ever followed Nintendo Force, but I don't know how they do it, but it's like a Patreon subscription to Nintendo Force is like, it's like $8 every 2 months and you get a magazine in the mail, and it's just like, oh my God, like, I don't know, it's incredibly cheap. And I've just like, I'll keep getting those and supporting that as long as I can. But
that's one that I'm surprised I've never written for. I've written for a lot of sites and magazines, but never Nintendo Force. I feel like,
have you reached out?
I feel like I have talked to them before and they've been like, oh yeah, we should figure something out. And like, I just, neither of us ever remembers, or they don't. I don't know. Right. But maybe I need to figure that out.
Yeah. We'll see if we can hook that up after the show. Yeah. But let's talk a little bit about Giant Bomb. So Giant Bomb recently, last time we did an episode, we talked about how Giant Bomb was basically shut down by Fandom, who owned Giant Bomb. And Giant Bomb has gone through a lot of different hands, I think, over the years, has kind of been shuffled around through different owners. And recently at PAX, which just wrapped up, turned out that all of the kind of main guys over at Giant Bomb basically were able to secure a stake in the company and now own it as an independent entity, which you love to see. That was a big cause for celebration. Are you familiar with them? Are you excited for this? Is this like a success story for you?
I mean, I love it. I know some of those guys individually and kind of follow them on Blue Sky and other social media. And I, read their articles and see their antics. But I'll be the first to admit that I've never been like a huge part of like the Giant Bomb community. So just from what I've seen, I really like, all the people that are involved that are, have a stake in that company. And I'm excited to see what they do moving forward. But yeah, maybe I need to get deeper into the Giant Bombiverse now that, Polygon's falling by the wayside. So.
Yeah, that's another one of those that we were kind of talking about earlier, the smaller sites that are very much directly funded by the readers, or at least, they're doing more like video content, I suppose, than I don't know if Giant Bomb even really does articles. But that is a model now that they kind of, I know, have to portend with all the other creators out there, right? I'm sure that wasn't the goal when they were originally sold and to a bigger company, was to kind of try to get away from that. But I think that there's benefits to both. Is there anything else that you would want to say about the state of the games media or like where you see it going in the future?
I don't know. I think that's the problem is that, like I said before, it is so volatile that I never know. I never know what's going to come back and what's going to go away and who's going to lose their jobs and who's going to suddenly have openings. And, I've had companies and publications that have reached out to me that have said, like, hey, we'd like for you to, work on this piece, or would you be interested? There's another company in the UK called Lost in Cult that are doing a lot of things. And they reached out to me. I'm actually doing some contract work for them on some video game related board games. And I'm in like very light talks with them about possibly doing a video game history book. So I have no idea. And that's, I guess, the most scary part is that like, you just don't know. Like I worry that there just won't be any publications left that either have the money to hire me, want to work with me, or I want to work with them. And at that point, I'm not sure what happens if I just stop writing or if I, start writing novels or whatever.
Well, I did see you do have a published book. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, actually. So do you guys remember the book fair back in school?
Oh, yes.
The book fair. Yeah.
Yeah.
So back in 2016 or 17, we went to the book fair and there was a book called 101 Movies to Watch Before You Grow Up for kids. And a bunch of the kids were buying it and showing it to me, and it had like really simple art. And I was like, man, I could write this about video games, like so easy. Like I got the whole like family friendly teacher thing going, and like video game history is like my big strong suit. So I just cold pitched the publisher, Quarto Books. And I was like, hey, I could write this and I could do it like pretty quickly and
like a games version of that other book that they'd already put out. Yeah.
And so they were like, 101 video games to play before you grow up. I was shocked because I've never had like a literary agent, and apparently that's how you're supposed to do it. They're supposed to reach out. They were like, wait a minute, what's going on? But I had a fantastic illustrator friend from Australia, Alice Carroll, do some mock-ups of like what the art would look like. And my wife is a former graphic designer, and she helped me like lay out the pages. And I think they were just kind of blown away by my pitch. And then they were like, yeah, let's do it. So they paid me to write that, and I still get like royalty checks in the mail for like $4.75
Hell yeah, let's go.
every 4 months or whatever.
Yeah.
Like it's not even in publication anymore. It's sold like decently well. I think like 15,000 copies or something like that.
Did it show up at book fairs and stuff like that?
It did, yeah. It
Yeah,
was at book fairs, and it was in the book order, like the Scholastic book order, which was
that's cool.
Yeah.
Oh,
like
that's
circling
memories,
it.
man.
Yeah, it's really cool. And I've contacted them and been like, because it's out of date now. I've got stuff
Right.
in there that I recommended that's like no longer even supported, like Lego Dimensions and things like that.
Sure.
And I was like, I can do we could do 102 games, and they were just like, well, they're kind of moving away from the 101 series. So I haven't had a chance to write another book, for kids about video game history suggestions, but it's something that's like, in the back of my brain. And that's kind of the book that I'm pitching to Lost in Cult is kind of a riff on that.
Like for kids more specifically, you mean?
Yeah, kind of. I think they want to skew it a little older just to, get the audience. But yeah, it was a great experience. And I would like to write more books. And honestly, I'd like to write some fiction stuff too. I'd like to write a series of like scary stories for kids. So we'll see.
Nice.
Yeah,
I love that.
That's another thing is just like, I just got to keep asking and keep trying. And because that's half the battle is just like, a lot of people are like, man, how did you, the rejection is part of it. But a lot of people just never even try. They're just like, well, I'll never email, Polygon. They'll never even respond to me. I'm like, yeah, but what if they do? Like,
yeah.
Right.
You never know.
The end result is the same if they don't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I'm constantly just like pitching, reaching out to people. And, there's a podcast I love that I'm listening to. And I just reached out to them and was like, hey, I'll come on and talk about things. Like, there's no way. They're never going to respond to me. But maybe they will.
Yeah. Who knows? I mean, look, I half of the guests we get on this show, it's just cold calls, it's like straight up, or it's just, also like just being active on social media, like, not trying to go out there with the purpose of like, I'm trying to network. I'm trying to like get people that I know to come on my thing or whatever. But it's just like, if you're just out there and you're a chill person and people see that about you and you put in the work, and people like look at your output, then it's, I find that cold calls, most people are at least nice and we'll hear you out, and so that's
be like no or yes or
yeah, exactly, and or like you said, it's if I'm left unread, like that is not, you gotta be okay with that at some point, you know what I mean? But I think it's great that you wrote that Kid for Books. I think, that you wrote that book for kids because I feel like so many kids are just not going to know a lot of the classic games too. So it's like, putting a lot of the kind of all-time classics in front of like the younger audience, I think is a great idea.
There's a lot of good feedback from parents saying like, whoa, I can't believe like you included like SSX Tricky or you included like Earthbound, like my kids like so excited to learn about Harvest Moon. And I'm just like, yeah.
Well, before we leave you, I did want to ask if you had a dream interview that you could pull.
Okay, so
what would you want?
I've interviewed a lot of people from Rare, Rareware back in the 90s. I talked to the Banjo-Kazooie team because I was trying to get a Banjo-Kazooie book made there for a while. That didn't happen. Talked to the Donkey Kong 64 team. I've talked to some of the Star Fox Adventures team. The Stamper brothers, who founded Rare, are like notoriously they don't do interviews ever. Like they've done like 3 and they were like in 1981 or something. I would love to just like write a book about them or just an article, just an in-depth article about like them starting up Rare, which was originally called Ultimate Play the Game. That's easily my dream interview is to talk to them because they're getting kind of old and I fear that they're, going to pass away at some point and they're going to have all of this like amazing stories. Like they went to Japan and like pitched to Nintendo and Nintendo was like, no. And then they took a Famicom back to Britain and just like reverse engineered it and made a game and brought it back and was like, check this out. It's called Slalom, which became a game. And Nintendo was like, how did you do that? You're like, okay, you're our first second party developer. Like that's insane. How did you do that? Like I've researched them so much, but I've never had the chance to talk to them. Every Rare person I've talked to, I'm like, can you put me in contact with the Stampers? And they're just like, no, we don't know where they are now. They don't even work at the company.
That's crazy.
that would be my dream, is just to talk to them, even for a little bit, just about their experience of starting that company and the, rise of, all the popular stuff that they did, Donkey Kong, Banjo-Kazooie, Conker's Bad Fur Day, and everything else.
Yeah, I'd read a whole book on just the choice of the direction they took Conker alone. Like what made them want to do that? That's crazy. But yeah, an oral history of of Rare,
I think it'd be a fun. I think
great.
I've never written a movie script, but I think it'd be a cool movie too.
I was just gonna say
British
that. I was
guys
like
going to Japan, flipping the script.
I was workshopping and kind of developing a script for a Tetris movie for a really long time, and then Apple came out and they were like, "We made a Tetris movie." I was like, "God damn it!" Because it is an amazing story, and I think that kind of like early, the like early era of game development was just all about like just showing what you could do, and it was the Wild West, and like, I think there's a lot of stories there that would be really interesting to mine for sure. But
I think you could also make a really cool movie about Psychonauts, the original Psychonauts, because that was a very like, man, they got screwed over by Microsoft, and then they like were like, we can't do this, and they had to like build it in this warehouse, and it's crazy. There's so many good stories out there.
Someone will make an anthology series of like the Mad Men of game development in like the 80s and 90s, and that's gonna, what, I'm actually gonna stop talking about it. I'm writing it now. All right, well, I think that's gonna do it then for our main topic. We're gonna go ahead and move on to our last section of the show, which is the games we've been playing recently. I finished up Astrobot. My friend Jeremy lent me his PS5 so I could play the one PS5 game that I actually wanted to play, which is Astrobot, and I 100%ed it just this weekend. So at least I think I did. I'm playing on his profile, so I didn't get any of the achievements, so I don't know if I platinumed it or not. I guess I probably didn't, but I definitely got all I cleared all the bots, and I got them all, so that was an incredible game. And now Jeremy is being like, I think I'm going to buy a PS5 Pro, so now I'm in a position where I can either give the PS5 back to him and he trades it in, or I just give him like $300 or whatever he would have gotten for the trade in order to like buy it from him. And I'm trying to decide, like, I've played the one.
I lost it. I don't know what happened to it.
Exactly.
I left it on the bus.
He comes over a little too often for me to pull that off convincingly, but I don't know. I'm trying to decide. It's like the one game I really wanted to play, I've now 100%ed. So I'm like, I don't know. We'll see. Do I need a 4K Blu-ray player that bad? That's my question.
You need to play. Have you played Returnal?
I have not. I wanted to.
I didn't think I was going to like it. Oh man, it's really hard, but it's really good. And it's like not the aesthetic of a game that I normally like am into, because it's like a third person shooter, but you have like a sword and aliens. It's really well done. Like, I kind of regret buying a PlayStation 5, except for Astrobot and Returnal. Those two games. I put a lot of time into those.
That's good to know. I do like some of Housemarque's other games. I like Resogun quite a bit, and some of their other games. So maybe I'll have to give that one a try. I don't know. We'll see. Jeremy, if you're listening to the podcast, maybe I'm going to buy that from you. I haven't decided yet. I've also been playing a couple other games. When I went swimming with some friends, we played Capcom Fighting Collection 2, and more specifically Power Stone 1 and 2. I was a big Dreamcast guy whenever the Dreamcast was out in 1999 and 2000. So I was a big Power Stone fan. That game holds up really, really well. It was a blast. Just, I brought my Steam Deck over to their house in like a little travel dock, and we had I played a little mini game, which was figuring out how many controllers we could connect to the Steam Deck that we could find around my friend's apartment. But that was a blast playing Power Stone and Power Stone 2. So I really recommend that. It's kind of crazy that they didn't just release those on their own and they're part of this bigger collection. I'll check out some of the other games in that collection, but that's certainly what I was excited to play in that collection in the first place. And then lastly, I do want to bring up that I've been playing more Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, the Big Circle. What's it called?
Great Circle.
The Circle of Doom.
The pretty good circle.
Yeah, the Dial of Circles. But as someone who's never really been into the Indiana Jones like films and doesn't play a lot of games like this, I will say I think I'm struggling a little bit with the game. Like, I know this game was super well received and everybody really loved it. I know you loved it, Summer. Did you? I don't know if you ever finished it, but No, I'm going to take that as a no.
No, I got farther than what I think you're going to say, though.
I mean, I'm still in the Vatican right now.
Yeah.
Like I'm still pretty early on in the game, but it's like, it's definitely, I'm finding myself getting lost really easily. And like, and with all the there's tons of side quests and I want to do all of them because they're fun side quests. But then I find myself like forgetting what I'm doing in the first place, like what the story is. I think I'm just bad at this game is what I'm trying to say. I'm not very good at the stealth. I'm not very good at the combat. But I'm not putting it down yet. I'm not giving up on it. Like I definitely want to see it through because the game is so incredibly made. Like it's really beautiful and it's clearly competently developed and the gameplay is really solid and fun. So I'm going to keep going on that. Hopefully I have more to report on that game next week, but I am very much enjoying that game, even if I'm having a little bit of struggles with it at the moment. Summer, what have you been playing?
Fair enough. Not much. Anytime that I have a little bit of downtime, I am opening Clair Obscure Expedition 33. Also, just want to shout out that I almost put together last minute a baguette cosplay, which is the name of the alternate outfit in the game where they're basically dressed as like a classic Parisian, right? With the red beret and the white and black striped shirt. And they've got literally a baguette like tied to their back.
Love that.
I saw so many baguette cosplayers at ASEN this weekend.
Really?
I saw so many. And every single time I saw one, I would just point and I would yell, "Wee wee ha ha baguette." And they immediately like would key in on it and they'd turn and they'd look at me and they'd be like, "Wee wee ha ha." I was like, the French game
That's
ever.
so funny.
Yeah.
Do they say wee wee ha ha in the game?
No, they say a lot of other French words.
Okay, but that'd be great. That'd be great.
They take a big long like drag from a cigarette and they go life, eh?
Yeah. Well, I mean, if they're wearing the black and white stripes with the red beret and the baguette, like they have to have they have a modicum of self-referential Frenchness about them.
Yeah.
That's good. What about you, Ben? Looks like you've also been playing some Expedition 33?
Yeah, a little bit. So I just got into it because I had a friend on Blue Sky that was like, hey, I'm not really big into RPGs or like JRPGs. He's like, but this game has the juice. And I was like, well, I have Game Pass on my Xbox. So I was like, might as well. And I'm not far into it, but I love the story and like the design of the bad guys is fantastic. And the fact that you can sprint everywhere really makes me happy. Just like truck.
You haul ass in that game.
Yeah, it's crazy. And the one lady just kind of like flies around. It's fun. Yeah. So I'm I don't know, like it's never been like a big thing for me outside of Pokemon. Like the
turn-based
JRPG.
games.
Yeah, turn-based. But I love that you can like dodge and parry and things like that. Like Mario RPG kind of style. So I'm into that. And then the newest DLC for Golden Idol came out, which is an indie like mystery point and click game. That's another one that I was just like, I don't think I'm going to like this very much, but it was on Game Pass and my wife and I kind of sat down and we just got so hooked on the very first game. And then the sequel came out last year, like randomly in November. They were like, oh yeah, here's a sequel to one of your favorite games ever. And then every few months they've been putting out like new like mysteries. And man, they always deliver. So
awesome.
Have you guys ever played the Golden Idol games?
No, I'm looking it up right now. It seems pretty cool.
Oh man. So it's like it's like point and click, but it's also kind of like Mad Libs. So you get this ridiculous screen where it's like blank blanked the blank, and then he hit blank with the blank, and you're like, what? But as you go through and you poke around the different scenes, you'll be like, oh look, a hammer, and then hammer gets added to your list of potential words. And then you have to look at the clues and like there's like time jumps and you just like put it together and you're like, whoa, like John Smith hit Billy with the hammer and it fell out the window. And so it's shockingly like immersive. And you look at the scene and like the end result and you're like, there's no way I could ever figure this out. And eventually you get there and you just feel really good about yourself.
That's cool. Yeah. It looks like there's a lot of DLC still coming too, which is cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like a pass type deal where you pay like $15 or $20 and you just get like all the DLC that's coming in the future. And and it's another like really cool little indie studio that I like just love supporting them. So yeah. Those are the main ones. Katamari a little bit on the phone because I can like Bluetooth an Xbox controller to it.
Okay,
It's just
nice.
more Katamari, and it's great. I wish it wasn't attached to the Apple Arcade or whatever, but I was like, I'll pay $7 for like 1 month just so I can play more Katamari. Because
Is that's a new release, right?
Yes, yeah. It's good. It's funny. It's like the king of all cosmos has become like an online streamer, and he's trying to get like. See, you have like people commenting like fake characters in the you're like, whoa, Katamari looks good. And I'm like, yeah, chat, check this out.
Oh, that's really funny though.
It is, and it's well done. You know what I mean? Like, there's been some like I think I own every Katamari game, and some of them like aren't great or they feel too rehashed. But this one's good. There's a lot of different like fun little ideas. Like you go to a rave and you have to pick up glow sticks. It's just like glow sticks everywhere.
Oh, that's cool.
So
it's like a full featured Katamari game. It looks like.
Yeah, it is. And I'm like praying that they bring it to like Switch or something. I'll buy it. I'll buy it again. Like,
yeah. Well, that and that Sonic game they put out on Apple Arcade too. I'd love to see both of those come to Switch. Maybe I'll have to pick this up on my Mac. So it looks like I can play it on the laptop. But awesome. Well, that's gonna do it. Thank you so much, Ben, for joining us on this episode. It was such a delight. We'd love to have you back on again sometime. That was a wonderful time. I'd like to give a thanks to MilkyWay.co for doing our website. Thanks to Corduroy for doing our music. Thanks to all of our patrons on Patreon. And if you'd like to find me online, I'm pretty much ever on the internet at Monolith Fiji.
You can find me at We Bewitched.
And what about you, Ben? Where can people find you online?
That's a good question. I'm trying to think because I'm not. I don't have a cohesive name across all things. On Blue Sky, I'm radishgames.com, which is the name of the little company my wife and I make board games for. Right. And I don't really do Twitter much anymore. On Instagram, it's Bertoli64. And on TikTok, it's also Bertoli64. Go get me some more TikTok followers.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, definitely check out Radish Games as well if you're interested in board games. It definitely seems like there'll be something for you there. If you'd like to find our show on social media, we are at Switch Headz on Blue Sky and Twitter, at Super Switch Headz on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. We have a website, switchheadz.com. And like we said, we've got a Patreon, and we also have a Facebook group, kind of still. It's on its last legs, but it is there. And a Discord. And we will have links to all three of those in the description of this episode, whether you're watching it on YouTube, listening on Apple or Spotify or any of the other podcasting platforms. Go ahead and give us a like and a subscribe over there on YouTube. Give us a review, all that stuff we said at the top of the show. And please join us on the Discord. We'd love to have you in there. It's such a wonderful community. And man, I feel like Discord's been really popping lately. We'd love to have you join if you are listening now. But that's going to do it for this episode on games journalism. Thank you guys very much for listening. Make sure you don't touch that dial because we're going to have another great episode for you next week. So I can't wait for you guys to hear that one. But in the meantime, thanks again, Ben. And as always, stay safe out there. Be kind to yourself. Be kind to one another. Let's all start our own games journalism companies and hire all our friends. That's the takeaway. We love you very much. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.